Are added stresses and the uncertainty surrounding life in a pandemic adding up to a mental health crisis across the Southeast Asian workforce? And what are the prospects for the more than 1 million fresh graduates in ASEAN, all looking for their first jobs right now? Shining a spotlight on all things HR over the past week, this is the HR Agenda for Thursday, October 14th. I'm Justin Harper. Joining me here this week is HR consultant Sam Neo. Sam Neo is an employer branding advocate and serial entrepreneur who currently runs 3 different companies. He's also a strong believer in community building and storytelling. Sam, welcome. It's great to have you with us.
Thanks for having me, Justin.
Now, you and your team look after clients with a combined workforce of nearly 1 million across Southeast Asia. What's been high on their HR agendas most recently?
I would say the core functions of HR doesn't change, right? I mean, talent acquisition, employee enablement, I think these are key things that still required essentially to keep the business going. The only difference is that from an attraction point of view, we see that a lot more are focusing a lot from the tech perspective. I think that's increasing in higher perspective. And internally from an enablement perspective, we see a lot around mental health, a lot around helping employees feel comfortable working from home, managing the stress, to help them become more productive, while being isolated away from the rest of the employees. So I think these are 2 areas that HR is focusing quite a lot on, of course, bearing in mind the regular operation style. But these are 2 key things I would say are pretty important at this moment.
Top of the agenda this week is the mental health of working professionals throughout the region and the impact that the pandemic has had on what was already a critical issue for employers here. Chief of Staff Asia has just launched its exclusive report on this very topic, and it makes for some very worrying reading. For example, a 2020 study by Willis Towers Watson found that as many as 1 in 4 employees across Asia Pacific had experienced mental health issues in the workplace. Even more, some 43% had experienced burnout and 27% had suffered from stress-related conditions. Now, Sam, those numbers sound pretty bad, but are they being overstated at all? Or would you agree that employers are facing a mental health crisis within the professional workforce today?
I actually feel that it's understated at this moment, right? Where I feel that all of us are undergoing some kind of mental stress because of the work from home situation and being isolated from the rest of the community. So I would say it's understated actually. I would say that almost everyone at some point of time over the past close to 2 years now, right, working from home is facing some sort of mental health issue in different shapes and forms. So I would say that this is something that's very, very critical for HR to pay attention to and to ensure that employees have an outlet, right, to unload the stress, to have someone to speak to, and for HR or even the entire company to find ways to constantly engage them so that they don't feel so disconnected, even though they may not be physically beside you. So I think that's something very important.
We know that mental health issues can take a huge toll on the individual, but what does it mean for a company or organization if mental health issues take hold across the whole or even just part of their workforce?
I would say everyone's impacted, isn't it? I mean, from an employee point of view, it's health, right? You see more absenteeism. Obviously, people are working from home, right? And you don't really take medical leave and stuff like that, but it affects productivity. It affects the motivational level, and see news reporting about the vaccination tsunami increasingly because of the mental stress as well. So that's one. From an organization standpoint, I would say if you keep seeing employees feeling down, not wanting to give their best, it reflects badly, right? From a branding point of view and from an output point of view, because customers, stakeholders can feel the energy and it sends a strong message to them as well. So I would say at multiple levels, individual level, organizational level, all will be impacted with mental health, not being well managed actually.
And obviously this is a global issue, but I wonder if there are specific factors here that might exacerbate mental health concerns. In many Southeast Asian economies, there can be a stigma attached to mental health and also some infamous cultures of overwork. Sam, do you think this crisis is actually bigger here in Southeast Asia, or perhaps just a different example of a global story?
I would say it's the latter. I mean, obviously we can argue upon till the cows come home, right? Which nation, which countries have worse mental stress. Like for example, they say Singapore is the most fatigued country in the rest of the world in that sense, right? But I think the challenge is that if different countries have different contexts and the situation in Asia, I would say part and parcel of things like, for example, we're not so easily outspoken, right? We don't feel so comfortable telling people that we're stressed out because it reflects badly. It's not just about people thinking you're crazy because of mental health issues, but it doesn't reflect well from a performance perspective as well. That's the usual stigma. That's one. Secondly, it's also from a hierarchy perspective, right? Because Asians typically have a bit more hierarchy, respect, kind of culture. So they don't feel very comfortable typically telling the bosses, I don't feel well, I don't feel like I can work, as compared to perhaps our friends from the West who are more expressive, more comfortable, right? Articulating their views. So I wouldn't say that which nation, which country, or which region is more serious. I think the severity is comparable to some extent. It's just that what is the nuance, right? Which of these factors actually drive more stress and which can be managed, which can be managed effectively at this moment, that has to be taken into consideration, basically. Yeah.
And finally, on this topic, we should deal with the question of what can and what should HR be doing to help protect their organizations and people. Sam, what strategies would you recommend?
I would say, go back to the fundamental basics. There are a lot of things that people always think, okay, there's new wave of mental health issue, there's new wave of digitalization, blah, blah, blah. I need to find new ways to always engage, right? But at the core of it, right, what people are looking for is, do you care about them? You see, if employees know that you care about them, whether it's through a simple conversation, a simple check-in, sending a simple care package, whichever form it is, because different organizations have different resources available, different contexts, different types of employees, different expectation. So the form that it takes may change, right? But at the core of it, we want to send a message to employees that we care about you. I think once the message is sent across, regardless of which shape and form, it definitely helps the whole situation.
Moving on to our next topic, and it's graduation season across university campuses throughout the region. More than 1 million new graduates will be looking for their first jobs right now and joining an already vast pool of underused labour who have been let go or furloughed during the pandemic. This was already a problem for the class of 2020. If we look at Singapore, there was a hefty drop in the number of new graduates scoring full-time jobs last year, from 82% in 2019 to just under 70% in 2020. In Malaysia, the number of unemployed graduates rose to 22.5% last year. So there's a large amount of uncertainty for those graduates. But does this also represent an opportunity for employers? Will they be able to pull in better, potentially even more loyal talent for cheaper? Sam, have you seen a change in the ways employers are looking at attracting and hiring new graduates since the pandemic has been in place?
I would say in Singapore in particular, we've seen a lot of the employers leveraging on certain government schemes, right? For example, like your SG United programs, where they bring in fresh graduates, right, on a trial basis, like a traineeship basis. And increasingly, you see that most people are looking more for experienced hires rather than fresh graduates. So I'd say that the shift has happened to some extent, but for the more progressive companies, of course, those with more resources as well, they're not neglecting the fact that they need to have young talents constantly renewing in the company. So that's where you see that things like scholarships, management training programs are still ongoing. But as a whole, I would say you can see that the hiring of management trainees or younger employees to deteriorate or reduce a little bit. And the requirement for more experienced hire to do more, in fact, has increased. So I would say, to some extent, yes, some companies probably might be exploiting the situation to hire better talents at a lower cost. But ultimately, if you think of it from a talent perspective, if you're a really good talent, ultimately you'll still be well paid in a rightful way. So I'm not too concerned about that. It's just a matter of how can a regular fresh graduate now actually shine, right? How can they actually showcase the true value in this somewhat more competitive market, because the hiring positions are much lesser, in particular if they're not in the tech space where there's high demand.
And I also want to talk about processes. Have you seen any changes in the ways employers are going about their mass recruitment exercises for new graduates?
I would say the approach hasn't changed drastically. So obviously you have still things like your career fair and stuff, but obviously because of situation, everything has moved online, right? So you've seen a lot of people using different platforms, whether it's a regular Zoom or those virtual networking AR related kind of platforms to engage the audience. So I would say the process wise, most of it has taken the digital platform. But what I've seen as well is that some of the more progressive companies have also engaged providers to help them engage the participants or students in that sense through offline channels like building communities, like constantly building advocates program and stuff like that. So it's not just the usual set up a booth, recruit, but now they're taking more proactive stance by beefing up social media, for example, by getting more brand advocates, by looking at talents ahead, right, and not just the present in that sense.
Thanks, Sam. We'll be watching this space with great interest over the next 12 months as well. Up next, we're talking HR tech with Chief of Staff Asia's Technology Editor, Vandana Nanwani, who joins us from Jakarta. Hi, Vandana, it's good to see you. So what's the latest that you have for us today?
Hi, Justin. Glad to be here. Today, I'll be looking at the HR technology market as a whole and the ways it has changed the way HR practitioners everywhere do the job. It really is an enormous part of business, big and small, and one of the fastest growing industries in the world today. The value of the HR tech market is set to be at 24 billion US dollars this year, a rise of 1.2 billion US dollars from 2020. And it is projected to keep growing up to 35.6 billion US dollars by 2028, which would be almost an 8% growth over the next 6 years.
Yes, tech and software solutions are certainly becoming a larger and larger part of every HR professional's life around the world. But how is the HR tech market in Southeast Asia? Is it growing at the same pace?
Actually, that's one of the most exciting aspects of all of this, is that Southeast Asia is one of the most rapidly growing regions for growth in technology, but particularly in B2B and HR-focused technology. Tech startups in Southeast Asia really defied the pandemic and attracted more than 8.2 billion US dollars in investment last year alone, and that is also expected to continue to grow. Businesses across the board are demanding so much from their HR team these days, which is really driving the demand for modern HR technology. Tools that can help HR to get the best of themselves, get the most out of their workforce, and free up some time so they can concentrate on their highest value-adding activities and workforce strategies. And that's happening in Southeast Asia as much as it's happening anywhere else in the world. From artificial intelligence-enabled platforms to new talent management software solutions to customizable employment assessment services, everything can be found here. And increasingly, almost all of these services are actually being built in Asia itself.
So, Vandana, what are some of the most exciting startups that you've come across?
Well, there are hundreds out there and more popping up all the time, but I'll mention a few ones to look out for over the year ahead. So here in Indonesia, we have an HR tech startup called Sleekr, and it caters to the needs of SMEs in the country by providing recruiting, accounting, and payroll services, and is driven by a Google Cloud platform. In Singapore, there's a new startup called Impress.ai, which focuses on artificial intelligence, AI, that is building a chatbot for recruiters to help with recruiting, utilizing, and of course, retaining talent. Whereas in the Philippines, there is a new startup called Better Team, a startup which focuses on employee experience. It uses analytics and turns it into information that gives employee engagement professionals the guidance that they need to start planning their employee experience strategy.
Now, I'll get you to look into your crystal ball. What do you see in the future for this HR tech market in Southeast Asia?
Well, it will certainly grow bigger and expand. Moreover, the startup culture is huge in Asia, allowing for new innovations like those we spoke about to continue taking place, which all adds up to enabling HR professionals to do more with less. Many reports show that Southeast Asia could actually become the world's next HR tech hub. And the sheer size of the population and economic growth means that over the next 5 years, Southeast Asia will become a powerhouse and have the collective manpower of more than 40% of the world. So if you think about it in those terms, it makes sense that the technology enabling and maximizing the value from all those very human resources should be based right here as well.
That's a very good point and something for everyone to look out for. Thanks very much, Vandana Nanwani, and we'll see more of you for more HR Tech news next week.
Thanks, Justin.
And thanks to all the HR professionals out there watching us this week in Southeast Asia. Check out chiefofstaff.asia for our exclusive report into staff events, which will be available for download from Tuesday, the 26th of October. Our team is also now taking nominations for the Chief of Staff Asia HR Ecosystem Awards. So if you're an HR services provider or an HR professional working with a fantastic partner or solution, get involved for some much needed recognition for all of that hard work. All the links and details from everything we've spoken about today will be in the article or description box of this video. And I urge you all to subscribe to keep our channels alive. I'm Justin Harper, and thanks for watching the HR Agenda.